Hey, hello, and welcome back to the Clark and Miller English Podcast. And if it's your first time, if you're a new listener, then welcome. It's good to have you here, whoever you are, however long you've been here. And yeah, have we got an interesting one for you today? And that's not a question, it's a rhetorical question. Have we got an interesting one for you today? Because the answer is yes. Today, I'm chatting with Cara Leopold from leolistening.com. Cara is an expert in helping people improve their listening skills in English, especially through watching films and movies, and really using the resource of television and film and movie to improve your listening skills. You can't just sit down and watch movies and films and expect your listening skills to get better. No, you need strategies and ways of dealing with it, and opportunities to talk about it afterwards. So this is very much Cara's thing, and it's kind of interesting. Listening is hell, really, in a second language. It's my least favorite thing. I'm learning Bulgarian at the moment, and listening is just such a nightmare. And for a lot of people, listening is kind of the worst. Well, let's not say worst. Let's be a bit more positive. The most challenging of the skills when you're learning a new language. So who better to talk to than Cara about these sorts of issues? Today, in this interview, we talk about how to improve your listening skills and enjoy movies in English. We also talk about the differences between film English and real-world English. We talk about how you can improve your English by talking about movies, not just watching films and movies, but discussing it afterwards, talking about themes, talking about ideas, concepts, things you like, things you don't like. But we also talked about what you can do before watching a film to get yourself ready for it. We talked more generally as well about why listening is just so difficult, because it is so difficult. Why it can be a good idea to start a new language through listening and pronunciation instead of reading and writing, which is what almost all of us do. A really interesting idea there. That was a good part of the conversation. And finally, making sense of the crazy world we live in through films, and having watch parties and being part of a community, and not just talking about films and learning English and improving our listening, but also making sense of the world through this art film that we call cinema. We also do talk about how you can join Cara's watch parties and take part in all of this stuff. And finally, why you should watch Fargo. It is just such a good film and TV show. But we talk about that at the end of this. So, yeah, all of that. All about listening and cinema and making sense of the world and Fargo. So, yeah, in the words of many Fargo characters, yeah. Let's just get going. So, if you have any questions about anything from today, as usual, you can reach me. My email address is gabriel@clarkandmiller.com. I am looking forward to hearing from you. Meanwhile, here's Cara, and let's get rolling. Oh, wait. But before we start, I just want to read an email from Carlos Domingos. So last podcast episode was all about what you should read in English and different books you can read that will help you improve, and that mainly that you won't get bored of. And at the end of the podcast episode, I did ask you lovely listeners what your most useful book for learning English was. And yeah, Carlos got in touch, and Carlos says, I'm reading the email now. Hi Gabriel. Good start. The most interesting book I read in English was The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, and the other two books by Stieg Larsson, The Girl Who Played with Fire and The Girl Who Kicked the Hornet's Nest. I like these 3 books because the storytelling captivates your attention all the time. It's fascinating. The British translation is perfect, in my opinion, of course, and I could learn a lot of new words. Carlos Vido. Oh, I'm sorry, is it Carlos Domingos or Carlos Vido? The email address says Carlos Domingos, the email itself, Carlos Vido. Either way, Carlos, thanks for writing in. And yeah, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. I haven't actually read these books or seen them, but they're very famous. I love the soundtracks to these films. And I'm guessing that we talked about different categories of books in the last podcast episode. And one category was books that are quite addictive and you have to keep reading, the page turners. And from what I hear, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo is one of those kinds of books, books that you just start and you have to keep on reading to the end because you want to find out what happened. So yeah, Carlos, thanks a lot. And take Carlos's advice. I think it sounds pretty good. If you want to read something interesting in English, try The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. Anyway, sorry for the interruption of my own intro. I interrupted myself and I'm deeply apologetic to myself about that. Let's get started with Cara's interview. Here we go. For real this time. Hi, Cara. How are you doing?
I'm not too bad. Yourself?
Yeah, pretty good. I got that Monday energy, like doing all the things energy.
Oh, right. I'm just like...
Monday.
What Monday energy that exists? Oh, okay.
Yeah,
that's a thing.
I'm great on Mondays, but Tuesday evening, Wednesday afternoon, I'm terrible.
It's because you've expended yourself too much on Monday
usually. Yeah. So I'm good. How about you? Have you had a good weekend? Have you had a good recent couple of weeks?
Not too bad, given weird context at the moment. I was like rediscovering the area that I lived in. We went on a walk to see some like kind of Belle Epoque Art Nouveau architecture.
Ooh,
there's
cool.
quite a lot of it. Well, actually, to be honest, the nicest stuff is near where we live. But we went a bit further on Sunday, went on a longer walk and saw some big villas that were built at the turn of the 20th century.
That's cool.
And they're quite nice to look at.
Yeah, the sort of free time activity you might not be doing if there wasn't any COVID.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the way I like to look at it. I would not be rediscovering my local area. So there you go. There's always a silver lining.
A silver lining, a bright side of the coin, which isn't a real metaphor. Yeah. Cool. Good. So today we're going to talk about, I guess we're mostly going to talk about listening and listening skills, because that's your thing, right? This is your area of expertise.
Yeah, it is.
Mm-hmm. So let's go for a classic start. In your own words, tell us very briefly about you and what you do and your thing.
Okay. All right. So you mentioned my name is Cara. Mm-hmm. My last name is Leopold. I have a website called Leo Listening. So that's a little play on words with my name and what I teach. And so I've been running that since 2016. I live in France. That's a detail worth mentioning. So I've been here since it wasn't the 20s. It was 2007. It was the previous decade. I moved here to teach English. So learning French, teaching English. So the thing that many people do when they want to learn languages and live abroad.
Yeah.
I was really interested in teaching English, so that helped as well.
Yes, it definitely helps.
It definitely helps if you actually want to do it, and it's not like torture for you every day going and teaching people.
I'm sure we've both met people who've ended up being teachers and they're just not built for it, and they suffer so much.
I think so, because it's hardly like the best pay or conditions. I know it's not working down a mine for 12 hours a day, or something like that, but it's not sort of it's a job that you would do out of vacation more than anything else, I think, if you really want to do it for a long time, because you're not going to get rich and you might well get exploited while you're.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, not to burst anyone's bubble. So yeah, I think you could do it in the short term if you didn't really want to do it, but you had to do it because, for example, you relocated to a new country and you're, finding your feet. But long term, you have to really know what you're getting into. And I did, and I suppose that brings us back to what I was talking about, is that I do teach listening skills, and I do that through movies, and I'm really interested in helping people kind of in a similar situation to me, so who have maybe moved abroad, or for whatever reason they have to interact a lot with native speakers of English, which is obviously tricky because they're not easy to understand. And that has actually made me really passionate about my job again, is kind of teaching on my own terms and doing my own thing and really helping the people that I want to help and who like working with me and who like watching movies. So that definitely rekindled. Not that I ever I suppose I did actually, because I did transition out of teaching for a while because I was like, oh, financially this isn't working because I'm working like 10 jobs and I'm still, I'm struggling, so I did transition out of teaching for a bit. And then I was like, no, I think if I do it, if I set up my own business and do it that way, I think
Absolutely.
That's the path I want to go down. So, and
I guess, would you call yourself a English listening skills specialist?
I suppose you could call me that. Yeah, one of my subscribers once described me as an English listening skills coach. I thought that was quite good.
Yeah, I think they're not exclusive. They're not mutually exclusive. You could be a coach and an expert, I suppose.
Yeah, why not? I suppose.
Ideally, really, I suppose.
Ideally, exactly. Yeah, I have a coach, but I've got no expertise.
Yeah. I don't want that coach.
I don't think so. Yeah, I think I'll pick someone else. Yeah, you could call me that if you want. Although there is the movie aspect, but then it's hard to be like a movie specialist.
I did want to touch on this a little bit. I'm just looking at my notes very quickly, but this was a question reserved for later. But yes, so you use movies in particular to help train people to improve their listening skills. Is that
exactly
is that right?
Well, also I would say for the joy of watching the movie as well. So it's kind of like I suppose it's like a sort of carrot and stick thing. We know that listening is a hard skill to develop, and it's probably the weakest one for a lot of people. I know that certainly when I was learning languages, it wasn't my best skill, and it was something that worried me quite a lot for a long time.
I'm totally experiencing this at the moment. I'm learning Bulgarian, and and I remember this from my other second language, learning Turkish. And it's the true for our students as well. Listening is a nightmare. Could we argue that it might be the most difficult skill because we don't have any control over it? We study a bunch, we pick up new phrases, we start to understand what we're reading, we're feeling great, and then we go out and someone just talks to you, and it's just like blah, 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 blah. You don't understand a thing.
It's really demoralizing, and actually weirdly people's productive skills can sometimes be higher than their listening skills. I mean, I know people often talk about the opposite, but I actually think you can say things, but then if you talk to a native speaker and they respond to you too fast, well,
what's the point?
The conversation isn't going to go anywhere, is it? So you're stuck.
Yeah,
it's not much fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, when I was thinking about this conversation and what sort of things we could talk about, I started really thinking it's true. There's so much focus on speaking, which is obviously a very, very important skill. But, when we ask someone if they know a language, we ask them if they can speak it, but we never really ask them if they can kind of understand it.
Because anybody could open a sort of phrase book for tourists and start learning a few phrases and start parroting some basic, phrases to say their name and say what age they are and where they live and stuff like this. But they're not going to understand those same phrases when they're actually spoken at normal speed by a native speaker. They won't, yeah, they won't have a clue. But actually, what's interesting is if you do work on your listening, I think that can then feed back in to your speaking and help you with that more than just speak. I think it's also very helpful to spend a lot of time listening.
Yes, and I think people, like, I know from my own experience, but also just from my students' experiences, that people just focus so much on speaking, and I guess it's a comfort zone thing because you have control there.
Yeah, and you can measure it, and exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so so you use like films as the kind of sort of central focus of your sort of learning program, your listening program.
Yeah,
Is that right?
kind of as the way it's kind of the incentive, if you like, or the motivating factor, because we know that nobody wants to work on their listening because it's scary and they don't know what to do. And the thing with movies is it makes it a little bit easier because people are like, oh, this is cool, I get to watch a movie if I do this. So it's a bit less daunting, and there's kind of that. Yeah, that's why I mentioned the carrot and the stick. There's the carrot at the end in the form of, oh, cool, I get to watch a bit of a movie. So then you're more motivated. And I think motivation really trumps everything. So
motivation is really useful thing to take advantage of when you're learning something, I guess. Yeah, and because there are some big differences between, like, you know, the English used in cinema and the English used in the so-called real world, and I'm just wondering how you consolidate those. So because films and TV shows tend to be quite scripted, and real world speaking is a bit more messy, and you know, we've got full starts and ums and ahs and people talking over each other and unfinished sentences and weird stuff going on that doesn't always appear in films. Which
yeah, definitely. Well, it'd be rare. I mean, sometimes it's deliberately added in films, but other than that, it can give the impression that speech is a lot more sort of regular and predictable than it actually is. But then I suppose this is a funny thing in a way, because then training with films is actually harder in some ways than what you might experience in real life, because all the things that you just mentioned, which I sometimes see described as disfluency features, which sounds weird, doesn't it? But actually they are a part of fluent speech. Like, you can't speak without using fillers, hesitations, repetitions, overlapping with.
That's a fantastic phrase.
Disfluency features. I must have seen that in a book. Actually, in a way, those things help you in a sense, because you can filter them out, or they give you sort of processing time. You know, in that stream of speech, people will give you a little break because they're obviously thinking about what they want to say next.
Yeah.
And movies don't have this. And there's something strange about movies that makes them kind of harder in a way than in real life. So it's true that we do. I don't know, we don't really worry about that too much in some ways in what we're doing, because we're also kind of mining the movies for really interesting expressions and also cultural aspects.
Cool.
That you get access to.
I'm quite curious about, like, how, you know, like a little curriculum or a little series of sessions with you using your technique would look like to a student. I don't know if you don't want to give away too many secrets or anything, but
no, it's all top secret. I'm actually later this week I'm actually doing a workshop for teachers, a Q&A workshop, and so people are literally asking me these sorts of questions, so it's really not trade secrets or anything.
I'm in good company then.
Or anything like that. Well, I suppose it depends what we're doing, because sometimes I just use for training listening skills, what I'm interested in using is very short bits of speech. So that could be something like just lines from a movie or famous quotes from movies, and that's really making people aware and teaching them about how words and sounds change in English when we speak fast. So it's just making people aware of, you know, how sounds disappear or merge together, or just generally sound a bit different than what we're expecting. So for that, you don't need to watch a whole movie, but it helps if you're interested in movies, because then you've got the motivation aspect. And
Yes.
then when we're working on something bigger, like an entire movie, I suppose the main thing we do is like just take our time working on it. So with my students, we have a movie club, and we do it over 4 weeks, by which I mean we take one movie and we work on it for a full month.
Cool.
So it's not like, 2 hours we watch the movie and we're done. They actually engage with it multiple times.
So it's, in a way, it's a sort of intensive listening program.
Yeah, although we have elements of like listening and speaking, because a lot of it is the discussion of the movie. So that's a really important element.
Oh, I see. So you're bringing in sort of other skills, talking about topics, talking about themes.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I say that it's a program to work on, listening, speaking, and pronunciation, but it's also, discussing the wider themes of the movie, discussing culture. It's immersion in English, I suppose, in a sense, because we are engaging with the whole film. So, yeah, but I always make sure that, for instance, I suppose I divide it into different stages, and I think this is important for anybody listening. If they're working on something in English, you've got to make it as easy as possible to understand it for yourself. That was very badly worded. You've got to make it as easy as possible for you to understand it as a non-native speaker of English, because it's going to be hard and kind of, you can't just like plonk yourself in front of the movie and expect to magically understand it all. So
that's what a lot of sorry, I'm interrupting.
Yeah, no, just that on that point, a lot of people do that and then they're upset, and then and it's just just frustrating. But I think there's a lot you can do even before you start watching to make sure you've got more of a chance of understanding it. So something we do with my students is I just get them to do things like watch the trailer or read a plot summary. I mean, I warn them, like, if you read a Wikipedia plot summary, then you'll get the whole plot of the movie and it might spoil it. But,
it will spoil it
because they are very, very detailed. You have to be a bit careful, but you can read shorter summaries online. You can watch the trailer. You can watch clips from the movie. You can read background stuff like reviews and things like this. They love doing that. Like, they love all the behind the scenes stuff.
So this is stuff you can do before watching a movie, so you
get yourself ready.
Yeah, it gives you a sort of framework.
Exactly. Or
scaffolding.
Yeah, exactly. Or even to give yourself an idea and perhaps be like, you know what, actually, this movie, I don't think it's the right one for me right now because there's some strange accents, or in the trailer they were really speaking too fast. It's a way to have discernment before you watch something and decide if it's going to, work out for you. So there's already a lot of things you can do.
That's really cool. Yeah. So you can provide yourself a framework beforehand to make it sort of easier. Yeah. I wanted to ask you a question that's not related to movies in particular, and it's like a meta question, because you started mentioning things like the way we speak is not how you kind of imagine it in the sort of learner's head. I know that's terrible paraphrasing of what you said, but I like, the big question is, why is listening so difficult? What makes it so much more difficult than like reading, for example?
Oh yeah, okay. Well, that is a good question. Well, I think one obvious point, if you're going to compare it to reading, is with reading you can go backwards and forwards.
Yeah.
Okay, now you're going to say to me you can do that by rewinding something you're listening to, but then we're assuming that it's a podcast or a video or something, or a movie, and obviously not all listening contexts are like that, because at some point you have to speak to actual people.
Yeah, presumably. You can't rewind people.
You can't rewind them, and you can't add the subtitles or anything like this. So I think that doesn't help. And then also the expectations that we have from learning through written language, which is still an issue, I would say.
Yeah.
A lot of us start learning a foreign language kind of through reading and writing, because everything's very focused on grammar and like having something written in the book to make it look like you're doing work. Like I think schools want to send kids home with written work in English to make it, and then it looks like they're doing something. Because if they were just all sat in a language classroom talking, then obviously all that language, it's not really recorded anywhere. It just kind of disappears into the ether. Like you don't there's nothing tangible, whereas like bits of paper and worksheets are tangible, and you think, okay, well, it looks like they're doing something.
So would you say that one of the reasons that listening's so difficult is that we, when we're learning languages at school, we don't really do it as much as we should because there's such a focus on the written?
And it's never like, for instance, now looking back, so when I learned French, so I had a teacher who was quite keen on grammar, which was, is useful. I learned to say a lot of, useful things. Like if you learn how to use the conditional in French, you can suddenly say an awful lot more than you could before, for instance. Or when you learn the French subjunctive, you can suddenly express a whole bunch of things that you could not express before. So obviously it makes you more fluent. But then we didn't really learn the sort of correct pronunciation of these things or the fast pronunciation. So I think this is part of the problem as well. And I actually think that a lot of grammar problems could be solved if people were more aware of what fast speech sounds like. I don't know about Bulgarian, but I know that a lot of Russian speakers struggle with articles, right? Like a and the.
Yes.
So I just said those very clearly, but when we speak English, we don't tend to articulate the articles very clearly.
We swallow them up, don't we?
Exactly. So I'm like, well, no wonder Russian speakers, they're already struggling because they don't have the same system in their language. Plus, half the time, they can't even hear them. So, of course, people are going to struggle. I mean, unless they read a lot of English to compensate. I suppose that's where you could compensate through reading, because seeing the articles on the page is going to reinforce.
But then you get like classic, they're not really even problematic, but, a lot of people sort of speaking articles too clearly when they're speaking, because they know they're there and they're kind of marking the articles. They're
trying to overcompensate, and then their English sounds off because the rhythm is wrong. Well, I've realized that now in French. So there's this weird distinction. So people say, well, English is a stress timed language, and a language like French is syllable timed. So that would mean, this is very theoretical, in French, every single word, including all the little words like articles and prepositions. So all these words that we gobble up in English and we don't pronounce clearly, in French, in theory, they should be pronounced just as clearly as any other word. And
yes, that's what being a syllable timed language means, right? That's a loose definition. Yeah.
But in reality, that does not happen. So in the language class, you will learn to articulate your articles really clearly in French. Une table, le livre, like exaggerated. But of course, French people do not pronounce them that clearly. And sometimes, honestly, they pronounce something that's kind of in between. Is it la or is it le? It's kind of a halfway house. When people speak fast, they are not articulating clearly enough to make it really obvious. So I realize now, looking back, I probably have some trouble with some articles because I just actually don't know what I'm even hearing. And that is in a so-called syllable timed language. So it's like, hang on a second. There's so much that people don't articulate as clearly as we're led to believe. So there's this disconnect between kind of the theoretical learning in the classroom and then what people actually then go on to hear. Yeah, totally.
I mean, when I'm sort of focusing on listening with my students, like, I think it's really helpful for them to forget thinking about them as separate words. I think that's a major thing, because words are quite artificial. We've only been writing, properly for a tiny fraction of the amount of time we've been speaking. And we don't speak in words. We speak in like little chunks of sound. Yeah. And I think for me, like, that's sometimes helpful to think about for some of my students when they're having trouble listening to things.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, it is more helpful to think about, because there's very rarely like a discrete boundary between the words like there is on the page.
Mm-hmm.
And I
And
think that
sometimes you'll have whole words disappear in a spoken sentence.
oh yeah, exactly. Or they just
Mm.
like they look so different.
Mhm.
A good example actually for actually I've just used one
Cool.
is adverbs. So actually
Hmm.
we use it a lot in conversation because it's kind of a discourse marker.
Hmm.
And so it's important, it comes up a lot in just casual speech. I'm not even talking about like a pre-prepared thing. We sprinkle it in everywhere. And that's the kind of word, if you say it carefully, it sounds like actually. And then
Hmm.
in fast speech, it can sound like Ashley,
Yeah.
Shli, or even just Shli. I mean, there's like millions of different versions of that word, right
Hmm.
down to something that just sounds like a bit of mess.
A
It
bit
doesn't
of breath.
even, yeah, just a bit of, yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
this is very, no, I mean, no wonder we struggle.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think perhaps once people realize that, like, because we've I've only just noticed this sort of thing in the last few years, and I've been teaching for like something ridiculous, 15 years or something. And we don't really notice these things and think about them very much if we're not language people, if we're just
Mm.
normal people trying to learn a language. So I think being aware of these things can make a huge difference to
Well, I mean, put it this way: if I were to sort of take learning a new language seriously again, I would really start with pronunciation and listening.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of two different topics there, because for pronunciation, I think your goal when you're learning is to kind of articulate clearly and get down the main sounds, especially the ones that are different to your language. And then listening is trying to understand the messy native comprehension, the pronunciation rather, of
Yeah.
of the language. I think as your goal when you're starting out is not to pronounce sort of Ashley instead of actually, right at
Yeah.
the very beginning. But that can come later. But yeah, I would definitely focus on those areas. Whereas now, for instance, in French, I pretty much understand everything I hear. Like I might not understand the occasional word, and I'll like ask someone, "Oh, what's that word?" But that's it. Whereas when I read French, that's when I come across more language that I don't know.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't really like reading in French, so I don't do it very often. But I did start doing it again because I realized I was making some like grammar mistakes and things, and I think that's because I was reading and writing in French less. So
You being French, the language being French, you get to read Asterix in the original language. That must be kind of
yeah, I
cool.
suppose you could. Yeah, I don't really read much in the way of comics and stuff. I probably should.
They're my go-to when I'm learning a language because they're just fun. Yeah. Anyway, everyone has their own thing with reading, and yeah. So I wanted to ask you a couple of other things.
Sure.
You mentioned that you're running a movie club. Is this?
Yeah, and
Tell us about that.
I touched on that because it's an easy way to explain kind of how I teach movies. And we discussed preparing yourself to watch a movie. So yeah, what we do with the students is we do literally prepare ourselves. And I also, they can watch the movie however they want, meaning that they can watch it with subtitles, without subtitles, and they can watch whatever subtitle combination they're comfortable with. So, for instance, if they want to watch it initially with subtitles in their language, that's fine. That's their call. And then, I mean, usually they watch it more than once, or they watch it in sections. Like they all have their different strategy for watching it. And then we get to the fun part, which is discussing it, the movie. And sometimes we even do a bit of live discussion while watching, because we've been having watch parties recently. Yeah, it's been really fun because given that cinemas are closed and socializing is a bit trickier. It's
Mhm.
really cool to get together and watch a movie and then text each other about it. It's very
Yeah.
funny.
Yes, I mean, in a way, there's been some more effort to sort of form communities than there was before COVID, I think, in some ways, because because people are kind of being more conscious about doing things together now. They can't so much, if that
Yeah,
makes sense.
weirdly, yeah, because
Mhm.
I don't think I would have really understood the concept before, or like the point of it. And now that I've done it, it's it's great. I couldn't imagine not doing
Mhm.
it now. So again,
That's
that's
fantastic.
something. Yeah.
And because this ties into sort of doing things together. You mentioned to me before that you find it's important for people to like watch movies together rather than alone, and things about like language communities and things like
Mm.
this. And you did mention this is something you're getting into
Uh,
more these days. Is that?
yeah, I think so.
Mhm.
Yeah, because I was trying to kind of figure out like what are we doing the movie club for? And obviously there is a language improvement aspect. Um,
Mhm.
that's part of it. But then part of it is also kind of making sense of the world and all its craziness, through art. And well, I suppose people have done this for the longest time with like, well, that's the whole point of book clubs. I mean,
Mhm.
if a book is good enough, if a book evokes something in you and you enjoyed reading it, I think it's just normal that you then want to discuss it. And it's the same thing with movies. I mean, we see this online. There are tons of discussion forums for movies. If you want to discuss movies, I mean, there's people out there doing it. There are tons of, places on the internet. So there's clearly a need within us to discuss what we've seen. It's not just pure entertainment or pure language
Mhm.
improvement. There's also,
Yeah. I mean, it's always fun to talk about a movie after you've seen it, right?
oh yeah, I mean, even if
Makes it
just,
more
well, I
fun.
mean, one of the questions I just asked, the first question I asked everyone was, did you like it? What did you think of it?
Hmm.
I mean, they don't have to have an amazing, brilliant analysis of it. Just,
Hmm.
were you into it or not? And, why? Talk to us about it.
Yeah.
And it's actually funny sometimes, even when people don't like a movie, that actually gives them a lot to talk about, weirdly.
Yeah. Oh, I think so. I don't know if this is a negative reflection on my personality, but I do prefer moaning about films to talking about good ones.
Well, I think it's easier to pinpoint why you didn't like it than why you did like it
Mm-hmm.
in some
But
in some weird way.
yeah, but the process of talking about something you didn't like is something that you could like. Um, so um, that can be really beneficial for language learning, I guess.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Mm.
definitely. That it forces you to use particular kinds of language that you might not be using otherwise if it's just to lavish praise on the movie.
Hmm.
So, but yeah, I just thought of something actually. The fact of
Hmm.
like watching it and discussing it. I mean, that is also a form of language improvement in itself. So discussing it is pleasurable in itself, and then the fact of discussing it is also a form of language improvement. So, I mean, everything
Hmm.
feeds into it, one another kind of thing.
Yeah,
Um,
that's great. So how long have you been doing these like these screenings, these watch
these
parties?
screening, well, the watch parties, well, actually, so it's funny. So we mentioned at the beginning, like stuff that you're doing now that you maybe wouldn't have been doing if it weren't for
Hmm.
COVID. Gosh, that's a
Hmm.
mouthful.
It's a good
People,
sentence.
people know what we're talking about. So, so after the the crisis hit last year, it feels like it was like 50 lifetimes ago or like a million
Oh,
years ago. Like,
yeah.
uh,
Mhm.
it's only been not that long.
Not
So
even a year, really. Not
I
since it
know.
got serious. Yeah.
So after that, well, I had already started experimenting with kind of a smaller version of the movie club, just where I got some people together for free and we watched a movie and we just discussed it. I mean, a very like
Mm.
basic version. And then after COVID hit, I was like, okay, I want to do something more with this. So I want to make it into not just watching and discussing a movie, but also like a longer thing with language improvement and with a group and all this kind of thing. So I had this idea for it that I'd had even before. And after COVID hit, I thought, well, let's just go for it, because I don't know, like
we're not going anywhere.
Yeah, so. I just thought that in a funny way, like a sort of, it's like crisis is an opportunity, and let's just go for it. And I had no idea how people would react, or if people would want to, or I don't know. It was almost like, it's just like there's so much uncertainty. You may as well just go for it, because, you know, why not? Really, more than ever, like, why not? So so we started last April. So it's been through various iterations since then. And even during the lockdown as well, I was doing watch parties just for free with a small group. So we were very ambitious at first, because we watched like a full-length film and then we were texting about it. But that was too much. And then we switched to watching short movies.
Oh, cool.
So, basically there's a list on the website Open Culture of movies to stream for free. So that includes feature-length ones, but then there's also a lot of short movies. So we were doing these like short weekly watch parties that were just like for free and for fun during the lockdown period. And we used the movies on that list, because then like everybody could access them.
That's great. Is this Open Culture? Is this
it's Open Culture. Oh, I think it's all kinds of free. I think it's basically things that have... what's that rule? You know, after 70 years, the copyright... ends, or so, you know, I
just call it the 70-year rule.
70-year rule, I like it. So it's stuff that you can access it legally.
Oh, cool.
It's not necessarily all old either. There's some recent stuff on there as well.
So Creative Commons stuff,
I guess. Or maybe that's more common as well for short movies to be available you know, more easily without you having to pay for them. It would. It does. So I've been doing all kinds of iterations of watch parties, and it's something that we added to the movie club maybe around October time. And it's been really good fun.
Cool. I've got a couple of questions regarding that. And something more general before I ask another question. So how can people join your watch parties?
I haven't actually done any for free for a little while. I suppose the easiest thing, if people are on my newsletter, if I started doing them again, then I would open it up.
That leads me to my next question. My next question was where exactly can we find you online? But that's going to answer the newsletter question too, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there you go. All those questions answered. Yeah, that's the bit. Yeah, that's where I announce things like this.
Okay, so that would be leolistening.com, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, with a dash.
With a dash, just to make it even more complicated.
Yeah, it's all right. It's more rewarding when you're finally found. It's like, aha, got there. So. the challenge is find leolistening.com with or without a dash. Which one is it? Cool. And if anyone joins your newsletter, they'll be able to find out about the watch parties when there are any.
Yeah, if I'm organizing any like the next ones I would have coming up. They're slightly exclusive they're for people who've already bought a product, and for people who buy the product, I'm organizing them every quarter. So I said I would do one in February. So in that case, we choose a movie from that's in that. It's basically listening quotes from different movies. So that and then we just choose a movie from those.
Oh, from the material you did during your training with them. Yeah,
exactly. So people have already worked with quotes from those movies to kind of understand fast speech better. So
that's cool. So then you get a chance to get it more in context after you've done the course.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I got 2 more questions. They're small ones.
Sure, go for it.
I like to think they're fun. 3 tips for anyone who's just fed up with getting frustrated with their listening, and like I am actually with my Bulgarian.
With your Bulgarian listening.
Yeah, I haven't reached that point when it's just like, now I understand what people are trying to tell me. I still haven't reached that point. So for people trying to reach that point, do you have up to 3 tips?
Up to 3 tips.
Yeah.
Well, I'm thinking about your situation, Gabriel, because so is your issue, but I'm wondering, like, what kind of level do you have in Bulgarian?
Oh God, I've been experimenting with my learning approach. So I've been reading a lot of Mike Lewis recently, who was a strong advocate of lexical learning. So I'm learning in a very sort of a way. I'm just picking up any sort of phrase that I consider useful or that I just come across, regardless of its level. So I've got a lot of very basic language skills, and I've also got lots of phrases that are kind of not quite all connected up together yet that would be considered quite advanced. So, but overall, I reckon I'm sort of early pre-intermediate.
Okay, because maybe the problem for you at that level is that you just don't know enough Bulgarian as well. So you might be, the problem for you could be that you're hearing things that you don't understand because you haven't like covered that grammar point yet, or you don't know that vocab. But when you say that you're picking up phrases randomly, I mean, is that from reading or listening or a mixture?
Yeah, a mixture. So I've got an Asterix, and I'm picking up lots of stuff from Asterix.
That's nice.
Yeah, it's cool. I love Asterix. I can never recommend Asterix enough, and Tintin for people who want to improve their reading. But I have lessons, and then I kind of just try and talk as much as I can and see how far I can go. But then also ask for phrases that are missing.
Yeah,
very haphazard
to fill in the gaps, because I mean, often I'm working with people who are actually quite far along with their English learning, and they're still frustrated because they can't understand movies, or with native speakers it's not always easy. So in a way, we know that the problem isn't really language knowledge, because they've already done a lot of English. It's not going to help them to go back and revisit grammar or learn more words, because that's not really the crux of the and that's who I'd like you to answer the question for, because that's for people listening. My vocabulary grammar issue is my own, but it's your own issue. But but I think that's the difference. So I think the big thing that people can do that they're probably not doing, that will at least give them kind of an idea of where they're going wrong or what the problem is to get a bit of feedback on what they're doing. So this is what we never really have. When you just listen to stuff, it kind of literally goes in one ear and out the other, and then of course it disappears. So at some point you have to find a way to kind of figure out, well, what did I just miss, or why do I still feel frustrated when I listen to English and I feel like I don't catch a lot of things? Like, you have to figure out why that is. So I really would encourage people to listen where possible with a text of some kind, of transcript, subtitles, because then they can actually figure out where they're going wrong. Because if you read the text and you're like, well, I know these words, maybe apart from a couple that are new, well, then we know. Whereas I think for you in Bulgarian, you might read a transcript or something and be like, oh, actually, I'm a bit wobbly with, I just, I don't know. Whereas I think in English, a lot of people are going to be like, hey, I know these words. What's going on here? So
that's true, isn't it? Like, there's you can know plenty of words, but when it comes out of somebody else's mouth, it's very difficult to decode. Exactly.
Yeah. Because you've probably been taught, as we all have, the kind of, everyone's going to pronounce all these words perfectly clearly. And then obviously they don't.
And then they don't. Yeah.
Damn them. Why? So one thing to have is a text, and that could be subtitles, could be a podcast transcript, could be the script of a video on YouTube. We're lucky now with technology that this is quite, easily available. So that's one thing you can do. And then you can start actually checking what you're doing. So then the next thing to do, well, I mean, you could just, read the text after and see, do I know these words? What was going on? And then what I really like for people to do to kind of diagnose their problems is to diagnose their problems, make it sound very medical. It's not a medical issue, but is to actually then for real, like, test yourself. So the next time you're watching or listening to something and there's a bit that's tricky, well, try and write it out. Try and actually test yourself. So, and then if you've got your text, you can compare.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's really, until you do that, you can't really know where you're going wrong. And I mean, the good thing about watching a movie is that usually you can miss things, and you kind of, it doesn't matter too much, because often you'll fill in the gaps with the images and the context and the body language and all this kind of thing.
Yeah.
But and I always say the threshold is kind of 80%. If you can get 80% of it language wise, then the rest you can kind of fill in with the visuals and all this kind of thing. But
and
still,
just figure it out.
Yeah, but still it's interesting to test yourself and be like, oh, okay, that's interesting. I know these words and they sounded weird in that line of the movie, and now I can actually see that. So then already you've actually got feedback on it, which you don't normally get. And for those kinds of sections, you just want to do something really short, because sometimes I hear people like suggesting doing listening and writing, transcription, whatever you want to call it, and they'll be like, do a minute of English. But I mean, you're gonna kill yourself trying to do that much. So the best thing to do is just focus on a few seconds, maybe 5 to 10 seconds. It can be really short, like really you say, short. because we speak in these chunks. In those few seconds, you'll get a few chunks, and then that will kind of, then you'll start to see, okay, here's how these chunks sound when they're fast.
So yeah, small periods, small snippets of
small snippets. Yeah, I'm not asking you to like transcribe the whole film or anything crazy like that. Just occasionally, when you get stuck, or when you think there's something interesting, or when you think you've missed something, you can do that just to kind of test yourself. And just see where you're at, basically.
Yeah. It's true, isn't it? It's like recording yourself when it comes to pronunciation. You can't know until you've checked.
Yeah, exactly. Or until someone tells you. I mean, at least with speaking, it's a bit easier for someone to tell you just said that wrong. Like, I mean, it's whereas with listening, nobody knows what's happening in your head.
Yeah, that's true.
The closest I can get is to actually see, okay, it's not perfect, but at least you can kind of show me where you're struggling. And often it's my students' transcriptions that force me then to kind of go into what we just listened to and maybe slow it down and analyze it and really be like, okay, this is why they heard something completely different because of XYZ that happened to the word. So it's very interesting for me, because obviously kind of my problem is that I rarely mishear things because I'm not hearing through a learner's ears, unfortunately. It's hard for me to put myself in their place. But when I see their mistakes, I can be like, okay. Yeah,
it's true, isn't it? It's just revealing the whole process. Well, most of the process right there. Okay, that's great. So listening with texts and testing yourself by writing things out when you're not sure.
Yes, and just seeing what you missed. And I think that'll be
working from there.
And working from there, yeah. The hardest thing is actually doing it, because if you've got into the habit of like just watching things and but it's not asking for much. It's really just like just what you could write on a post-it note. I mean, it's not pages and pages of transcription.
And I think one of the main skills for learning a language is being able to change, because you have to keep changing what you're doing.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Several times during the whole process, because otherwise it becomes ineffective.
Exactly, because it's natural to hit plateaus. Sometimes part of getting off the plateau is switching up what you're doing. Like I say, even now with French, sometimes I have to force myself to do reading and writing which I used to do more of. when I was working in a French company. I don't really need to do that anymore, and I can see sometimes my language skills suffer because of it.
Right. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, you always have to, at every level, there's always, well, it never ends, really. I mean,
Yeah.
it never ends. No, but I mean, in a good way. It's in a good way.
It's a
Why would you want it
journey,
to end?
never-ending journey.
Exactly.
Yeah. Lots of landscapes. Yeah. Yeah, totally. Breaking habits is one of the key skills for language learning, definitely. And that's a good one to break. Yeah, try and write what you hear down. That doesn't get recommended much, which is good that it's being recommended.
I mean, it can be a little bit dispiriting if you like. I think people like focus a lot on their gaps. They're like, if I'm going to do this, I should be able to write it down perfectly. But the thing is, if you're writing it all down perfectly, then you've chosen something too easy, or there's a mismatch. You want to have some gaps. Like when I choose things for my students, I know they're going to be challenging, and I know if they write it all out perfectly, I should have chosen something harder.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's great. One more question, I guess.
Go for it.
What's your favorite film?
Oh gosh, what's my favorite film?
Because I'm really into music and stuff, I cannot answer the question, what's your favorite band? But because I'm not such a film buff, either of those? Is that a word? Because I'm not such a film fan, I find it quite easy to answer that question, but I'll ask it to you first.
Oh gosh. Well, I did at one point. I made a course based on movies, for teaching listening skills, and I just picked 3 movies that I liked. Because I thought you could agonize over it all day. I thought I'll just pick 3 that I like, and then we'll go from there. So in that course, there was Superbad, which is a very silly comedy.
Oh, that's like a high school.
Yeah, it's like a high school comedy. So there's that. Then the other movie was a Wes Anderson movie called Moonrise Kingdom. So I really like Wes Anderson's films, and I particularly like that one. And then the third one was Fargo by the Coen brothers.
That's such a good film. Yeah.
So that's the movie from the 90s, and then now there's also the TV series based on the movie, which I've seen a couple of seasons of.
Did you watch season 3?
I don't know. I think we definitely watched the first 2 seasons. I don't think we watched season 3.
3 was amazing. I think
really?
I think it's among my favorite television of all time. They nailed it in that third one.
Oh right, okay. Well, I have to catch up. See, you got a tip from me, because we watched the one with Martin Freeman in it. I think that's
the first one.
I thought the first one, and then was season 2 the one with Billy Bob Thornton?
Yeah, I think that was the one that was set in the 70s.
It's possible. Yeah, it's been a little while since I. Okay, and then season 3 somehow we've missed.
It's the one with Ewan McGregor. If you're measuring it by actors.
Oh no, I did see that. Yes, the parking lot king of Minnesota or something, or I don't know what. There was something to do with a parking lot empire. There was Ewan McGregor and the actress in it. I really like. I can't remember her name, but she's really good.
She was good. I can't remember her name either.
Okay.
Yeah, but it was. Yeah. Okay. Cool. That one. That's the one.
All right. So I have seen it. Tell a lie. I just forgot how good it was.
It was really, really good.
Well, there you go. So for Fargo, you've got lots of options. You can watch the movie or you can watch the TV series, and you'll be good to go. But the main thing is to watch stuff that you like and not be swayed by others' opinions.
Yeah. And you have to be enjoying it to some extent.
Otherwise you won't stick with it. I mean, that's even more true for things like TV series, because then you really need to show up every week, and the more addictive it is, the more you'll keep coming back. But even for a film, it's not easy sitting there for an hour and a half, 2 hours in a language that's not your own language. So you really have to be motivated. You have to want it.
Yes, indeed.
Foremost.
Yeah. So. Cool. Great stuff. Well, I don't think I've got any more questions. You've covered everything very concisely.
Oh, good. I was worried I wouldn't.
No, I think so. Those are all my questions. Have you got any questions for me at all?
I don't think so. I just heard the bells going on your end. I feel like that's a sign that we should wrap up.
It's the school bell, but in a church. Yeah, great. Well, in that case, it's been great to have you on. Really, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Some golden advice here. I particularly like the phrase disfluency features. That's my personal takeaway.
I will have to. I'm sure that was like an official term in a book that I read about teaching listening skills, but I think it sums it up pretty well.
Yeah, I think it's a good phrase. I'm gonna think about how that can have meaning in other contexts as well now. But yeah, so yeah, Cara, thanks a lot. Have a great day.
Thank you so much for having me, and I hope it helped.
Yes, great. Well, have a good one then, and see you in the future.
See you. Bye.
Bye. Okay, that was it. If you have any thoughts about anything that we covered today with Cara, then just send me an email, gabriel@clarkandmiller.com. You can also reach Cara at her website. It's with the hyphen, with a dash. It's leo-listening.com. leo-listening.com. And I'm looking forward to hearing from you, and I'm sure Cara is too. In the meantime, stay safe, stay happy, stay productive, and I will talk at you in 2 weeks. Ciao for now.